Alrighty.
Here we are.
Here we are.
This is Pauly.
This is Johnny.
And this is the Canadian
Bro Show.
Episode 5.
All things Canadian.
All
with
things
Pauly
Canadian.
and Johnny.
And this is Canada Day weekend. So for all our Canadian viewers, Happy Canada Day.
Happy Canada Day, You're all a bunch of hosers.
Take off,
And then come back.
And come back, please.
With
now,
beer.
Sorry, go ahead. No, we thought it'd be fun if we talked about our favorite albums that we grew up with.
Music.
Now, do you want to start, Pauly?
Music, sure. I'll start.
You go.
Growing up in the 60s and 70s, I was very fortunate growing up in that time. We all were, because it was a magical time in Vancouver and Kitsilano specifically. And my earliest memories were of all the vinyl albums that my mom had.
Right.
And my mom had really, really good taste in music. And she had pretty good taste in clothes, but she was just really young and she just didn't know what the hell was going on. And, it was a dysfunctional setting, but, she really tried to be a mom and a dad. And really at the end of the day, you can't ask for anyone except that, you love them, you care about them. And
she obviously did a great job, because look at the result, right?
He's so generous, and he's not being facetious, he's being kind. Because Johnny's a kind guy. We're both half glass full type of dudes. We're both cautiously optimistic, we're both positive. We both work out. We're gonna do a health video pretty soon. We got a whole bunch of videos, but I'm excited to do the music, because the music albums. And what we did is we just chose our top 10-ish. And if Johnny picks one that I have, then I've got backup.
There you go.
And because we both grew up at the same time, and
yes.
Although Johnny's more of a rock and roller, and I liked rock and roll, but I grew up with a real variety of music, and that my list, and it's not in any particular order at all. But would you like me to start?
No, you start.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So my cheat sheet.
Age before beauty.
Oh. Okay. In that case. Well, you are certainly a much better version of what you used to be.
He doesn't like that I said that.
No, it just caught me off guard.
Fussy.
But that's Johnny being Johnny. So my mom had a ton of vinyls, and she had a real mix of music. Everything from Motown to Nana Muscuri, and everything in between. If you don't know who Nana Muscuri is, you might know Mary Elma too. But she loved that kind of strong female vocalist from a different country, and it was weird. I listened to it too, but I was more interested in my first one that I remember. We had this album, and most of these albums, I've actually owned every single one of these albums, and a lot of them were my mom's albums. A lot of them are from the early 70s, and the very first one is Motown.
Okay.
The legend, Marvin Gaye. What's Going On? Was just an absolutely... I must have listened to that album. Everything.
Voice.
It was just so smooth, and Motown, and it was just perfect. And he was an icon, and the ladies loved Marvin Gaye. Unfortunately, his father didn't feel the same way, and it was a tragic end.
Oh.
Marvin Gaye was killed by his father.
I did not know that. That's
I'm
horrible.
sorry, it's a little bit of a downer, but anyways, he was a brilliant musician, had a voice like angels. Very silky, and he was handsome and charismatic, and his music, and I think this is maybe one of the best Motown albums. It's certainly the one that came to my mind. Johnny, what do you got?
Okay, I'm going to go with Fleetwood Mac. Rumors.
Oh my goodness.
One of the greatest albums, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, of the 1970s. And the one song in particular from that song I really like is Don't Stop.
Oh, I love that.
Because it's such an uplifting song. And if you ever feel depressed or down in the dumps, for goodness sakes, go on YouTube and type in Don't Stop by Fleetwood Mac. You will feel energized and motivated like never before. And that's my choice.
5 decades later, great choice.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, Rolling Stones did a 500 album edition at some point in the last few years, and Fleetwood Mac Rumors. List, right? Well, it's not only on the list. I think it's the 5th best album of all time. You Can Go Your Own Way,
another great song. Right?
It's the best of all. It's the 5th best album of all time.
Yeah.
That's Rolling Stone, of course. But I actually had that on my list.
Oh wow!
But because we're the same age and we grew up in the same time and we both liked rock and roll music and all kinds of music, really, for myself. I don't know about Johnny. I'm interested to
100%.
find out what he is.
Yep.
But I totally concur with that. I agree with it. I'm going to go back to a little Motown vibe for my second choice. And this second choice is, I was trying to figure out who do I pick. And really, I just had to pick both and call it a tie for this particular one. And again, these aren't in any order. But it's just when I think about Stevie Wonder, I think about his velvet voice and the fact that he was blind.
Yes.
And he could play the piano and multiple instruments.
Obviously not a deterrent to his
none whatsoever.
None,
and just this album and by the way, the Marvin Gaye album was 1971. What's Going On? And that's when I met Keith Bickford, who was in our last episode, comic book episode, and I mean that's a long time ago. But this Stevie Wonder album is Songs in the Key of Life.
Okay.
We had the album. I still have the album upstairs.
Wow.
And it was in 1976. And at the same time, I had to mention Elvis Presley is my favorite musician, favorite music.
The Elvis movie?
I didn't see the Elvis movie, which is strange because I'm saying it's my favorite musician. But Elvis Presley did hundreds of albums because his agent, the Colonel, was driving Elvis into alcohol and drug addiction, and which he succumbed to. But he did one particular album was a double album on gospel, and Elvis's voice was so charismatic. And the reason why I bring that up is because I had the pleasure of seeing Elvis live.
Wow.
In 1977 in Portland. I believe it was the old Rose Garden.
What year? 77?
77.
Wow.
It was 6 months before he died, tragically.
At a young age too.
And
in his 40s?
He was about almost 400 pounds then. He was so fat.
Wow.
But it was the most incredible concert I've ever seen. My mom bought it for my birthday and Christmas. My sister and I went down with my mom's girlfriend, Barb, and we watched Elvis, and it was the most amazing performance I've ever seen in my life. And I was blown away. The hair on the back of my neck is standing up right now thinking about it. So that would be I would say Stevie Wonder and Elvis back in 1976. Did you
see that movie? That was the first movie that Kurt Russell and John Carpenter teamed up on. They made that Elvis TV movie back in the day.
Yeah, and he was great in that.
He was, Kurt Russell was
really enjoyed that.
Okay, so my next choice is Pauly. Do you remember K-Tel? K-Tel was a record company. They were like the playlist before playlists were
I know where you're going with this.
So one of my absolute favorite albums as a kid is called Sound Explosion.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Casey and the Sunshine Band.
Well, that is also one of my favorites. Sound Explosion was a compilation of different songs, some of the best pop songs and rock songs of the 1970s. Yeah. And a couple of my favorites are Heartbeat by the DeFranco Family.
Wow.
It's a super catchy tune. And another one, which I think Pauly remembers very well, maybe from experience, maybe not, Smokin' in the Boys' Room by Brownsville Station. So that's my second choice, Sound Explosion. In the Boys' Room. Very catchy tune. And there was another one, I have another song on my list from that album, Last Kiss from Wednesday.
Wow.
Oh, where can
Boy, you pulled that one out. What year was that?
Very sad song,
what year was that?
Also very beautiful.
What year was that?
I want to say early 70s.
Yeah.
So K-Tel was a company that produced all of these amazing albums. And again, this was before the internet. And so that's what we had when we were kids.
And by the way, K-Tel used to advertise on television.
Oh, the best commercials.
Best commercials.
Really eye-grabbing.
Oh,
they
totally.
Really commanded your attention,
Absolutely.
Right?
Every single time. And we go out and buy the album.
I mean,
it was my mom. We had a whole bunch of those. The next one I'm going to go with is, I'm thinking about my friends Eddie and Danny Romagnoli.
Okay. Our mutual friends.
Mutual friends we grew up with, and Johnny went to school with them at Henry Hudson, and they were my neighbors when I lived in Belleville Rentals. But another tie of the same band, I'm going to go with the Beatles.
Oh, that's on my list.
I'm sure it is. And the Beatles, this was a tie because they're both, I think, two of the best albums that Beatles produced. The first one would be 1969 in Abbey Road. Of course, you know the famous photo of them crossing the street. Abbey Road was a global master splash. It was just unbelievable. And then I'd have to say the next one was a little bit more psychedelic.
Such an evolution with the Beatles, right? Because they started off, I mean, all their songs are great, but their first few songs are kind of, pop, peppy pop. But then later on, they matured.
They evolved.
They experimented.
They experimented a lot.
And it paid off.
And in this particular album, the one that's tied is Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And they were experimenting in a lot of different things at that time, as I think everybody was.
It was the 60s.
It was the 60s, 70s, and it happens. And so your next one.
Okay, well, that is also on my list. So I'm going to go with Synchronicity by the Police. I think this is one of the best albums ever.
Classic.
And I must have listened to it 1,000 times. This is in the early 1980s, I want to say.
Yeah.
And I was a huge Police fan. And Sting, I was such a fan of Sting that I would go to movies just because he was in them.
Yeah.
There's something about his voice that I found very appealing, even when he wasn't singing. So, Every Breath You Take, Synchronicity 1 and 2, those songs are so epic. And so that's my third choice. Do you like the Police?
I do, and it's a funny story. When I was playing professional basketball 25 years ago in the UK, I was playing for the Newcastle Eagles, and Newcastle they're called the Geordies. They have a very distinct accent. And Sting, it's not his real name, but his musician name.
Gordon Sumner.
Gordon Sumner was actually from Newcastle.
He was a school teacher.
And I met him.
Wow.
In a pub in Newcastle.
Of all things.
Of all things. And I went up to him and said, "Oh, you probably get this all the time. I don't want to bother you, but love your music." And he looked at me and smiled and he nodded his head and then ignored me. But it was fantastic. I mean, it was a good choice.
Contact with you.
Good choice. And I wasn't a huge Police fan, but I certainly respected their music.
Yeah.
My next choice is one you already mentioned, so I'm going to skip down because I was going to say Fleetwood Mac, 1977, Rumors.
Wow, that's on your list too?
Oh, we had the album. I've listened to that album thousands of times, and I still listen to it. It's still damn good.
So good.
It's so good. Like I said, Rolling Stone had it number 5 out of 500 of the best albums. Marvin Gaye.
Okay, really?
What's going on? Yeah.
How about that?
Well, and that's why I chose it. Not because I chose it because we had the album and I listened to it all the time. But I wanted something Motown. I love that soul vibe. I love all kinds of music, but I just really enjoyed that. So I'm going to go back into 1998 with Lauryn Hill, the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, and I'm going to talk about 2 of her albums because that was the second one. The first album where the Fugees sort of exploded was the worldwide hit album called The Score in 1996. And I absolutely fell in love with them. There's stories that bring me back to that time in 1996. I remember where I was, who I was with, where I was going, where I came from. And you know how music really becomes part of our DNA as human beings.
It triggers memories.
It really does, and it's fantastic. So I just love Lauryn Hill, and I love the Fugees.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. My next choice, now tomorrow is Canada Day, so my next choice, Pauly, is about as uber Canadian as could ever be. And I think it's going to blow you away. We'll see.
Okay.
Teaser. The Great White North by Rick Moranis and Dave Thomas as Bob and Doug McKenzie. One of the funniest comedy albums of all time.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about music. There is one great song called Take Off by Geddy Lee from Rush. Which is a really, really catchy tune.
Yeah.
And my mom bought me that album. And we talked about SCTV on an earlier episode and how much we love that show. Absolutely one of the funniest comedy albums of all time. So that's my next choice, which I feel is very appropriate.
Wasn't that the name of the show as well, The Great White North?
Yeah. Well, the album was called The Great White North.
But it wasn't the show called? It was Doug and Bob McKenzie.
That was a segment on SCTV.
Right. But what was the name of their show, though? It was just a segment.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
And then they made that movie Strange Brew.
Right. Oh, yes. I do remember that.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. What a talented cast, SCTV. Oh, my God, the talent that came out of that. By the way, one of the people that was on that show, you posted on social media, actually passed today.
Martin Mull?
Yeah.
He Fernwood Tonight.
I know, but he was a guest.
Part of that cast?
He was a guest.
Very funny actor.
Very funny.
He was on Roseanne too.
Well, he was Canadian too, wasn't he?
I'm not sure.
I think he was.
Okay.
Anyways, to us, he was. But rest in peace, my man. Terrible. Life goes on. So because Johnny and I both love rock and roll, we love hard rock. I loved heavy metal. I love thrash metal. I love, grunge. I love all kinds of really good music. If it's good, I love it. This particular band captured my attention like no other band. Probably my favorite band of all time. And I have two songs. One was the old school version of this band with their original singer. And the next album, the very next year, was a new lead singer, same band, but just a different vibe.
I want to take a guess. Van Halen?
That's a good guess, but no.
Oh,
I'm going to go with AC/DC. And I'm going to go with the 1979 album. I think it's their best album, with Bon Scott, one of my favorite lead singers. He had this raspy voice, and AC/DC in the 70s out of Australia had a very bluesy, soul, sort of hard rock vibe, guitar riff driven with Angus Young, but Bon Scott, his voice was electric. It was fantastic. So I'm going to go with the, that was, by the way, Bon Scott's last album. Unfortunately, he had a tragic death by drowning in a bathtub. Apparently, he was very, very, very drunk and swallowed his own vomit. And it's terrible, but
don't drink and bathe.
Don't drink and drugs. It's just
they don't mix.
It doesn't work. And by the way, he just did a live performance the night before and was prepping for the next album, which is AC/DC in 1980. So this is 79. His last album, Bon Scott, which was Highway to Hell. And that's when Angus Young found the Scottish singer Robert Johnson to replace him on the album that Bon Scott was supposed to do, which was Back in Black.
Oh, classic.
1980. Their number one selling album of all time for AC/DC. And
that's the song that opens the Iron Man, the Robert Downey Jr. First Iron Man movie, Back in Black.
Incredible.
It's very catchy.
And to be able to lose someone like Bon Scott tragically, who was so charismatic, and the early AC/DC was more bluesy rock, and even some soul, even a little Motown vibe. But Back in Black was just in your face, full of salt, guitar riff driven, and Brian Johnson had a very raspy voice and did a fantastic job. So that would be my next band.
That is a great choice.
Thank you.
Okay, my next choice is Saturday Night Fever, which is a movie soundtrack. The Bee Gees, one great song after another. How Deep Is Your Love?
It's various artists, by the way.
Another one of my favorites is Disco Inferno by the Tramps.
Yeah, it's various artists. That was the number one album in the world.
Various artists, exactly, yeah.
In 1977.
And that was the first restricted movie that my parents took me to.
I loved it.
Yeah.
I snuck in to the restricted movie. Yeah. My mom didn't take me to it because she was working, but I snuck in.
It's one of my all-time favorite movies.
Just it's phenomenal. So and that soundtrack, I have it to this day. It's upstairs. Wow. And it is the Bee Gees. I mean, those guys'
their voices were so harmonious.
Incredible.
Right?
But that whole album was kick-ass.
Yeah.
I think you can say kick-ass on YouTube because it was. That's a great call, and I have that as well. You. So it's a good thing.
You did? It's on your list?
Yeah, I've got a couple extras because I knew.
What are the odds?
Well, no, we both love music. We both
birds
have similar,
of a feather
flock together, which is why we're doing this. So very good one.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed that. And I have a backup so that I've got a couple because we've hit two that we like.
Okay.
So my next one, without getting into detail why I like this album, let's just say it's so important to me. It was a pivotal moment in my life. And I remember listening to the entire album, side A, side B, and I'll never forget it. It was probably one of the best days of my life. And it was Led Zeppelin, 1971, Led Zeppelin 4, Stairway to Heaven, amongst others. Stairway to Heaven, I think, is probably one of the best songs I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
It is incredible, and I never get tired of hearing it. And I was a Zeppelin fan, but a lot of the people that I went to school with really loved it, and I was more into AC/DC, and people would go like, Zeppelin's way better. They were. Led Zeppelin was maybe the best band in the world for a period of time in the 70s and 80s, and just an incredible album.
Good call.
Thank you.
Okay. My next choice is The Stranger by Billy Joel. Huge Billy Joel fan, Just the Way You Are, Only the Good Die Young. And he was a very prolific musician and still performing to this day in Las Vegas, I believe.
Yeah, he is. He is.
And he actually checked him. I saw this on Wikipedia. Apparently, he actually checked himself into a quote unquote funny farm, like an asylum.
Yeah.
And he saw the people there, and he realized, I'm actually pretty normal. And that was the beginning of his journey of becoming, following his bliss and becoming a musician. Great voice, great songs. And so that's my next choice. The Stranger, Billy Joel. Are you a Billy Joel fan?
No.
No?
But I do appreciate his talent because, again, in Rolling Stone's top 500 albums, he has 3.
Well, yeah.
So, I mean, that says it all. I mean, and he has some great music. I've got one song in my car out of the 670 songs I have in my car. And
Uptown Girl?
No.
No?
That's just, it got played into oblivion. It's like,
How about My Life? That's a good one.
Yeah, that's good.
Bosom Buddies?
But again, I'm not really interested in Billy Joel. I do appreciate his prolific, and he's still alive. That's pretty impressive. My next one, growing up in Kitsilano, I don't know about Johnny, I'm sure he did. I used to go to the planetarium.
Oh, yeah.
All the time. Don't say anything. I used to go to the planetarim almost daily. Don't say anything. He just did. I don't know why. Probably didn't hear me. But anyways, the HR Planetarium was something that I grew up with in Kits. I grew up in Kits Beach basketball courts, the Kits pool, and the planetarium. In the early 70s, the ponds outside the planetarium, which has a very unique architecture, like a spaceship from a different galaxy.
The crab out front.
Well, the crab out front with the water feature.
It looks like a flying saucer.
Yeah, pretty
it's
much.
Still there.
It really is.
I live right by there.
It's amazing. You live 2 blocks.
Yeah.
And so the ponds used to freeze, and we used to play ice hockey in the ponds. But I used to go to that, and that's when I discovered Pink Floyd far before that. But they used to do a show, and it was, so the Pink Floyd, 1973, The Dark Side of the Moon, was probably my favorite. And they used to do a show at the planetarium, and they had this huge machine, and they would put the lights down, and you'd go back in your seats, and it was this, you were in space, and you were going through time, and the music, if you haven't seen it, to this day they're still playing it, go.
You're the Oculus of its day.
I'm telling you. When I say Pink Floyd, because I've seen them 3 times live, and phenomenal shows, I also have to mention 1979 Pink Floyd The Wall, which I saw at the Ridge. Back in the day.
Very dark movie.
Very dark, but really good. And I don't mind dark. I can handle dark. I've got a lot of dark, really good films. I love zombie, apocalypse, those kind of genres, right?
We can do a show on zombie movies. That'll be an upcoming episode.
Well, we're definitely going to do a show on that. But Pink Floyd.
Okay,
come on.
good choice.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, well, I'm going to keep things Canadian and go with Bryan Adams. Cuts Like a Knife. One great song after another.
Couldn't be any more Canadian.
Yeah. And that's my next choice. I mean, I listened to that album a million times as a kid. Yeah. And huge fan. He
bought a half block down in Gastown, and it's studio, and he still owns it. And very prolific Canadian.
And he did a duet with Sting and Rod Stewart for that Three Musketeers movie.
Right.
All for One.
Right. There's some legends, Yeah. So that's a good one. I'm not a huge fan. I will tell you a quick story. I was working at the Cannery as a busboy. Bud Kenke used to own the restaurant in the Cannery, and it was just, we'd do 4 seatings, we'd do 800 covers, and it was crazy. And I had to go to the washroom, and normally we weren't allowed to use the washroom in the front of the house because it's for the guests, and I'm wearing a uniform and everything. But the washroom down in our male changing room was being used, and I did not want to use it. From the reason why it was being used, it was just horrific. So I went up and I had to go, and I'm in the thing, and I kid you not, on one side is Bruce Springsteen on my left, and on my right is Bryan Adams, and they're both having a waz, and I slide in between 2 of them.
Family friendly.
Yeah, I slide in between 2 of them, and I told myself, do not look down, look straight ahead, and don't say anything. And of course I did. Wow. And Bruce just ignored me and bolted, washed his hands, and so he bowled me and ignored me, and I looked over to Scarface, and sorry.
No, that's just mean.
No, it is. He had a bad. No, I know, but he had a bad acne situation. And I was going to say, hey, but he bolted as well because he knew I was just trying to, bother them. I don't know. But a funny story, true story too. So my next album is another classic from the 70s, probably this band's best album. And it was the #1 selling in the world for many years. And to this day, I would have to say the Eagles.
Okay.
1976 in Hotel California.
Great album.
Love it.
Our mutual friend Eddie Romagnoli, I remember.
He had a copy.
huge
We had a copy.
Eagles nut,
Oh,
right?
they loved it.
Super
Well,
passionate.
it was Max and Gina, his parents, were like hippies.
Yeah, I
Hardcore
remember.
hippies. I mean, they lived in a teepee for
Take
crying
It to
out
the
loud.
Limit is one of my all-time favorites.
Fantastic.
It's so beautiful, right?
Really excellent album. There isn't a weak song in the entire album. It's so that good. And Johnny, what do you got next?
Okay. I'm going to go with another movie soundtrack. I'm going to go with the original Rocky by Bill Conti, Gonna Fly Now. Again, super uplifting.
Yeah.
And just the kind of music that once you hear it, you want to go for a run, or you want to hit
You
those
wanna go
weights,
work out.
or you want to do something physical, right? Or
Do you
maybe
still
wanna
work
write a
out
book
too
about
when
things.
you're doing
Pardon
your
me?
workouts? Do you still listen to it?
I post videos of myself working out, and I actually add songs from the Rocky soundtrack to the videos on my Facebook
Yeah, I
page. You
know.
can do that. Like, what an age we're living in where we
that's
can
why
do
I asked
stuff
you.
like that.
I
Right?
asked you that because I
Yeah.
saw that.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's pretty cool.
So I had the original Rocky album as a kid, and I must have listened to it a million times. And the final track on that album has an instrumental version of the Rocky theme that's all violins, and it's absolutely beautiful.
Johnny never ceases to amaze at the depth of knowledge. I'm so happy to partner with him on the
Shallow in
Canadian Bro
every other
Show.
aspect, but
No, I mean,
depth when
it's
it
like
comes to
we can
pop
talk.
culture.
Look, we can talk for hours, but really, we just want to make them. We want to try to make our videos like really entertaining and short and concise and informative, and show a little bit about us. A lot of you have the same. You like the same product, so I totally get it. My next one is actually one that Johnny brought up, and that was the various artists of 1977 Saturday Night Fever. But I'm not going to do that because Johnny's already talked about it, so I'm going to go to my next one. I'm really happy to talk about also one of the top albums, I think the top 3 albums of Rolling Stone's 500, and that would be Bob Marley's.
Oh.
Now, Bob Marley did a lot of great albums, but he did a remaster of his greatest hits in 1984 called Legend. And I'm telling you, if you want to sit down and adjust yourself appropriately, however that might be, could be a coffee, could be anything else, and get lost in an album, 2.5 hours of one masterpiece after another, and the coolest dude. And, I loved it. I still listen to it. One of the greatest albums of all time.
Okay, cool. My next choice is, I think I have maybe 1 or 2 more. I'm going to go with Elton John's Greatest Hits,
You can't
which
go
is an
wrong
album I
there,
have from the 1970s.
Yeah.
And great voice, great songwriter. And did you know that, I don't know his actual last name, but he picked his last name John because of John Lennon.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, I learned that from the movie, that Rocket Man movie that came out a couple years ago.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
guess
Saturday
they'd be
Night's All Right for Fighting, absolutely one of my all-time favorite songs.
Man, it
Right.
just, I remember going back to St. Augustine's, Keith was there in 1974. I remember the #1 album in the world in 1974. Do you have any idea what that might be?
Not offhand.
Someone you just mentioned.
Oh, Fleetwood Mac.
No.
I give up.
Someone you just mentioned.
Rocky? No, 76.
Someone you just mentioned just a few moments ago.
Bryan Adams? No, that came later. Okay, I don't know. I give up.
Elton John.
Okay, there we go.
Captain Fantastic. And I was going to put that down. Captain Fantastic is one of the best.
Benny and the Jets. Great.
Fantastic.
Benny and the
So
Jets.
my mom also had Elton John's first album when he was with his lover, or partner at the time. They were songwriters. I can't remember the name. I can't remember his partner's name, but we had the vinyl as well. And Elton John is to this day one of the best singer-songwriters.
Incredibly prolific.
Oh, he's
and
just,
all of his songs are really fun to listen to. And a great lyricist too.
and
right?
and entertaining.
Yeah.
And his
And
shows.
his outrageous costumes.
Oh
that he
yeah,
wore
he's
on
flamboyant.
stage. He was very much himself.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a good way to go through life.
Absolutely.
Right?
Kind of like Johnny and me.
Yeah.
We're
We're
very
just
much
ourselves. We
ourselves.
are who we are.
We
We're
are.
Popeye.
And
What's your next choice, Pauly? I think I'm done. I think that's my list.
I've got a few more because I wasn't sure how many we'd be copying each other, but
I have one more.
I have 4.
Okay.
Or 3. So my next one, going back to Elvis Presley, my favorite musician, songwriter, singer, everything.
He also liked comic books, you know.
Yeah.
That's why he wore the cape.
Yeah, and he was a prolific actor as well.
He was.
And a good actor. He was just talented. He's just a really striking looking dude.
He was.
His voice was magic.
Yeah.
Men loved him. Women loved him.
Suspicious Minds is probably my favorite Elvis song.
Incredible. This album, a lot of people don't know about, but if you're a hardcore Elvis Presley fan, in 1969, when he was really started to come into himself, he did this show where he showed up in black leather, and it was just it just blew everyone away. He did an called From Elvis in 1969, From Elvis in Memphis, and it was 30 songs. If you can find this vinyl somewhere,
wow,
buy it. It is incredible. And he was at the height. This is before his addiction and weight and all of the things came in, and drug abuse and all of the things that
level of success is difficult, I think, for most people.
Colonel Parker drove that man into the ground because he was the biggest money murderer. But you have to listen to it to really. If you haven't, 30 songs, and it's one of the best albums. I don't have that album. I can't find it. I think you can order it on Amazon.
There's a vinyl store on 4th Avenue.
Oh, they don't have it. I went.
Okay.
I've been to.
There are stores in Vancouver that sell vinyl albums.
Oh, there's quite a few good ones.
That kind of sound.
Black Swan. We grew up in Kitsilano, and Black Swan was like probably the big one.
Remember 8-track tapes?
I do. So that would be mine. You said you have one more?
I'm going to go, and I have a story attached to this pick, which is Band on the Run by Paul McCartney and Wings. So the Beatles break up in, I want to say, 1970. Paul McCartney starts his own band. I think Band on the Run is just...
With his wife, Linda McCartney.
With his wife, Linda. And I was actually working security at a hotel, a 5-diamond hotel not very far from here. And I was standing in front of a penthouse suite. This was maybe 5 years ago, I want to say. And this very burly man in a British accent, wearing almost like a military kind of uniform, he grabs me by the shoulders, because I had no idea who was inside the suite. You know, my company called me. They said, John, we need you to work at this hotel suite. You just stand in front of the door and just make sure that nobody's in the hallway. Fine, no problem. But I didn't know who was inside. So this big burly guy grabs me by the shoulders, and like not roughly, and he kind of does this to me, and he says to me, the man is coming out. I'm like, oh, okay, fine. That was cool. Paul McCartney.
Wow.
Yeah. And he looked at me, and I was totally cool. I mean, inside I was losing my mind. My heart was, like, I instantly recognized him, and my heart was pounding, but I'm wearing my suit. You know, I'm working, I'm on duty, and I'm security, and, you know, you're meant to present a sort of conservative demeanor. And he looked at me right in the eye, and he said, hiya, just like that.
Awesome.
And then later in the day, he returned to his suite, and I actually got to hear him play piano in his suite.
Wow.
He was almost like he was composing a song.
Yeah.
One of the absolute most amazing days of my life.
Wow.
Like I would live my whole life over again for many reasons, but that would be in the top 10.
And
that experience.
I have to admit, we had that out as well. As a matter of fact, Eddie
Remember
Romagnoli.
Remember that song? Yeah, Baby, I'm Amazed.
Oh, well, right? Eddie had it, so he lent me the album, and I went out and bought it and returned it to Gina and Max. And great album.
Yeah.
And to be able to go from the Beatles to be able to transition with your wife. Yeah. Very difficult to do, but it shows you what a talented musician, songwriter. He was great. I loved him. I still love. I very much love the Beatles. I would have to go for my next one. Is I had to mention. I wanted to talk about different genres of music, right? So I had to mention grunge because grunge in the '80s and '90s in Seattle, when the old Kingdom was there and the Seattle Supersonics won their world championship, and therefore after grunge really exploded, and all of the grunge bands, there's about 10 top ones, and they're probably the top 5. For me, and maybe we do an episode in the future about musician or songwriter, or you know, the singers, the lead singers.
Yep.
Who are the top 10 best lead singers of all bands? I would say that this guy, and Rolling Stone has him in the top 5 singer-songwriters of the grunge, 80s and 90s. And I would say Soundgarden, 1994, Super Unknown, is one of my favorite grunge albums. And the lead singer, who unfortunately supposedly committed suicide.
Oh, nuts.
It seems to happen when you're a rocker. Chris Cornell had one of the most powerful... Well,
is that the same Chris Cornell that did Casino Royale?
I think he was whacked.
The main song?
But I don't really know. But he had one of the best, most powerful voices out of the grunge. And they have him as the second best grunge singer. And guess who's the first?
Kurt Cobain.
Yeah, another guy that got whacked himself. So if they did indeed, I don't know. Seems like a lot of these tragic stories in film and music.
Right.
But Soundgarden, I still listen to it. It's on in my car, and his voice is just, it brings me. If I could sing, like anyone, it would be Elvis. My number 2, Chris Cornell.
Okay. And
Myself.
now, as I was asking a couple of minutes ago, is this the same Chris Cornell that did that Casino Royale song? You Know My Name, the first Daniel Craig Bond movie. The same guy?
Yes, I believe.
That's one of my favorite Bond songs.
It really is fantastic.
So
I believe it is.
Yeah.
I believe it is. But I wanted to throw just one more out because, you know, when I got my stereo, instead of buying. In the episode of comics, we were talking with Keith Bickford, and I went. One of the guys that worked in the comic book shop called me up and said, "Look, I got Jordan rookie cards. You got money?" I'm like, "Yeah, I got money." "How much?" He goes, 100 each, or no, 100 for 2. He had 3. One was a misprint, so I didn't want it. So he said, "Look, I'll give you 150 for these 2," and they were really good. One was a 9.5 out of 10, and one was a 10. And I had the money, and I was like, crap, I wanted to buy my Yamaha receiver, my Wharfdale speakers, and my turntable, my Pioneer turntable, so I could have my basement set up for my, my music cave, my man cave.
Yes.
And I'm looking at these Jordan cards, and I was a basketball fan from 1971, and Jordan's the greatest basketball player of all time. Many people think it is, and these were rookie cards. I bought my stereo system instead. Michael Jordan's rookie card just recently sold for several $1 million.
Hindsight is 20/20, isn't it?
Oh.
But at least you got your stereo. Look at it that way.
Oh, and I got a lot of work on that stereo. It was awesome. I had the purple light. It was great. But I mean,
that's like the story of moms back in the day who threw away their kids' comic book collections, which was basically like tearing up money, like tearing up the winning lottery ticket, right?
So when I finally got my stereo, what I did is I went out and bought vinyl, and I was into like heavy metal and Black Sabbath and Iron Maiden, and I was into hard rock. And in the 70s, I don't know if you ever went. This is a story that I'm sure Johnny went. I went all the time. Empire Stadium was where the Vancouver Whitecaps, our professional soccer team, played out by the P&E.
Right.
It was the P&E was like big, and that's where the Pacific Coliseum.
Pacific National Exhibition.
Right, and that's where they had all the rides and they had the animals and they
sort
had
of our Disneyland a little bit.
Pretty much Canadian, eh? Like
very rickety roller coaster.
Oh my
very
goodness!
Scary.
Still running, by the way. And it moves, and it
you almost had to sign a waiver before getting on this roller coaster.
And the Canucks used to play in the early 70s when they were horrible.
Held together by duct tape, basically.
I'm telling you, it was.
Or seemingly.
But the soccer pitch that was Empire Stadium could hold 30,000 plus fans. And what they did in the summertime when the Whitecaps weren't playing in season is they would have these festival seating concerts. And they do a weekend concert, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And they would have 7 bands on Friday, 7 bands on Saturday, 7 bands on Sunday.
I never went to that.
And you bought a festival seating ticket. It was like $50 for the entire weekend. And I'm there, and all of a sudden, I don't know who to expect. I know Heart is there, Little River Band, Bryan Adams, Loverboy, Trooper, all these a lot of Canadian bands.
Raise a Little Hell.
Yeah, and Trooper, there they go. The boys and the bright white sports car, waving their hands in the air. He was there too. Yeah, and all of a sudden this dude comes out, and he comes out of the stage, and he's wearing a full red leather outfit with red high platform shoes, red tight leather pants, red flaming afro.
Wow.
White dude, and all of a sudden I went, oh my God! They didn't say that Sammy Hagar.
Oh my goodness.
Was going to be,
which ties into Van Halen.
And
he took over from Eddie Van Halen.
Van Halen and his first band, this album, in 1973, the first band that Sammy Hagar was with was called Montrose.
Oh.
1973, one of the best rock albums of all time.
Really? Never heard
Only
of it.
9 songs, and I had
Montrose?
Montrose, Sammy Hagar, and he digitally remastered the same album. It's only 9 songs, but every single song's on. And Sammy has one of the best rock and roll voices, and he's still with us, and he's still singing, and he's still awesome. Yeah, he's not with,
Right.
not with them anymore, but
Okay.
they did a digital remaster in 2017. If you can find this album remastered in 2017 by Montrose, which was done in 1973, Sammy Hagar, get it. One of the best rock and roll albums ever. And that's the last one I have, Johnny.
I have one more, and then I guess we will wrap this up for episode 5.
Sure.
It's Born in the USA by the boss, whom Paul mentioned recently,
Yeah.
Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah.
Dancing in the Dark,
Yeah.
and one song after another. Just another. And I had the album, and I actually had the tape, and I listened to. And Bruce Springsteen again, to me, one of the most amazing. And the way he sings "Born to Run,"
Yeah.
like he's really going for it, right?
Well, I mean,
Like ripping out his vocal cords.
there's so many. He is so beloved, and there's so many fans for
And
Bruce
a great
Springsteen.
lyricist as well.
Absolutely.
His lyrics are very cinematic.
Yeah, a great
Almost
show.
like when you listen to his songs, it's almost like you're listening to an audiobook.
Yeah.
Like a really well-written audiobook,
Yeah.
because he just evokes imagery in your mind as you're listening to his music, right?
You notice how he's a writer, eh? The eloquence that falls out of his mouth. I was never a Bruce Springsteen fan, by the way, but I do appreciate superstars and talented athletes, musicians, writers, on occasion, real
Living
estate
legend.
realtors,
2 living legends.
hoop junkies. Yeah, it was. Anyways, another great is episode 5
Yeah. Is that it? Are we done?
with the Canadian Bro Show. I
Okay.
think we're going to wrap it up.
But we have to end, because we're doing this now, with
Johnny and his puns. Being a writer, a lot of his puns are,
internet.
yeah.
Here we
And-
go. Pauly, do you remember that chiropractor joke I told you? It was about a week back. Oh, you're tough.
Oh my God. I mean, that's the thing with puns.
Wow.
It's how you deliver them.
You're harsh.
Yeah. They can be hit and miss, but Johnny's got a lot of puns. So he's going to come up with better ones. But
Oh, come on. That was a 10 out of 10.
it was an 8 point.
gold standard
It was an
pun.
8.3, but it just
That
caught
was
me
a
off
mint
guard.
condition pun.
It's one of those ones, the pun where you've got to just, huh? And if you don't get it right away,
To tie it in with albums, I would call that pun platinum.
oh, alrighty then.
Are we done?
We are done. Again, thank you kindly for taking
Thank
your
you,
time.
Pauly, for making this all happen.
Well, and thank you, Johnny, for being a part of it.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, and we are looking forward to bring more content. We're going to be doing
We love doing this.
a video.
This is so much fun.
At least once a week. It's a hobby for us, but if you enjoy it, we certainly appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we just want to say thank you. And if you could kindly, if you really enjoy it and you want to help us out, the algorithms of YouTube is all done by likes and commenting and subscribe. And if you would like to subscribe, that would be great.
And share with your friends.
And share and
Spread the word.
and leave comments.
Yes.
And
we
if
want your
there's something
feedback.
you like, please tell us. If there's something you don't
Suggestions?
like, please tell us.
Topics?
Yeah, topics
Right.
is good. If you have something that you would like us to do, a show, we would love to hear from you.
And we want to hear about your favorite movies and your favorite albums and your
Absolutely.
childhood experiences.
Yeah,
It's
I
all
mean-
about connectivity.
Sharing is caring.
It is.
On the Canadian Bro Show. All things Canadian
Eh?
with Pauly and Johnny. My name is Paul Bale,
I'm John Leister.
and we are the
The
Canadian, Bro Show.
Cheers.
Peace, everyone.
Peace.
We'll see you next time.
Live long and prosper. And don't forget, God loves you.
God does love you.